Welcome to the NCDWI Guide podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NCDWI guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 249 of the NCDWI Guy podcast. Today, we are asking a very simple but important question. Why is running a small firm so hard? Why is running a small firm so hard? I'm also answering that question to the best of my ability. So what can you do about the hardship? What can you do to overcome the obstacles in the way? So we are going to walk through 3 obstacles that I see for small law firm owners. And then we are going to talk through 3 solutions or 3 paths for overcoming those obstacles. So to dive right in, the number one obstacle that I see, and this is not maybe by priority, but just in terms of time, chronologically, the first obstacle for running a small firm easily, why is it difficult, is because of law school. Now, I'm going to take this thought in a very different direction because I think law school teaches some very bad business practices. I think everybody realizes, and I have said repeatedly on the podcast, that law school does not teach you how to run a law firm. It teaches you case law. It teaches you how to study the law. It teaches you how to argue the law, but it does not teach you how to run a firm. I don't think there's really any dispute about that. I'm not going to dive deep on that front, but not only does it not teach you how to run a firm, but it actually teaches you some bad business practices. And I don't know that this is all related to the way that law schools are set up, or if it's just kind of like the tradition of how a law school operates. But here's some things that I think are bad business practices that are learned during law school. So this first one may be more during internships or summer associate program, but certainly is learned during the law school framework. The billable hour is discussed frequently in law school, and obviously for summer associates that get in any prestigious firms, they are actually billing for their summer associates' time. So problem number one within the law school obstacle is the mentality that the longer it takes you something to do, the more valuable you are. In reality, in business, it is obviously the exact opposite. Instead of making more money because you spend more time doing something, you should make more money doing that same thing in less time. That is true value. Think about it. Think about if a doctor got paid more to do a surgery because it took him longer to do that. They're doing your chest surgery. They've got your chest sawed open, right? Working on your heart. And instead of doing it in 15 minutes and sewing you back up, it takes 3 hours. Now, if the same operation is getting done in that same time, who's the better doctor? Well, clearly the one that's doing it in 15 minutes. Better to not be exposed to the elements and bacteria and be under anesthesia for a 3-hour period versus the surgery that takes 15 minutes. Obviously, the person doing it quicker is more valuable. The billable hour is a mental problem because what do we get told constantly in law school? What are we selling? Our time. And to some extent, that's true. In every profession, in every business, ultimately time is getting exchanged for money. But what we are told in law school is that the more time that you spend doing something, the more valuable you are. And again, it's not phrased that way, but that's what the billable hour implies. And in fact, the faster you do something, the more valuable you are in your profession, whatever that may be. Another issue in law school in terms of bad mentality, bad mindset that gets built in is research, right? So obviously, the more time you spend on research, more valuable you are. But also, you get passes as a law student to Westlaw and LexisNexis, and you get all of these amazing opportunities to use these state-of-the-art tools. But you don't get to see how much it would actually cost to use those tools in real practice. And you also then don't get trained to use the tools as efficiently as possible. There's not connection to the work that you're performing and the actual value that you are producing in doing that work. If you're spending 20 hours and $1,000 in research tools on something that should have been done with a couple of simple searches and a 3-page memo that took 20 minutes, yes, the former might be this glorious brief that is thorough in every capacity, but a complete waste of time for your client to be actually making any decision on. And so we're infected with this idea that what we are doing is not connected to the dollar. We get infected with this in all aspects of practice, right? We don't connect to the amount of time that we're putting into a case, into research, into side investigation, into interviewing witnesses, into subpoenaing documents. We don't get this connection between all of the time that it takes to do those things and the actual cost or value that we are providing to the client. Another thing that you see is, famous movie that now is escaping me, Harvard Law. The idea is that the purpose of law school is to help you to think like a lawyer. The goal of law school is to make you think like a lawyer. And it's bothering me now. I'm going to have to refocus because I cannot remember the name of that dang movie. You guys that are listening probably know it. You can shout it out. I can't hear you, but I know you guys know what movie I'm talking about. But anyways, it's all about focusing on the ability to think like a lawyer. So where is the focus then? It's in the library, right? Like you see in the library, it's in reading books, textbooks, statutory books, cases. And obviously some of that has shifted now here in the age of technology to being much more like digitally based. But we're very focused on the academic and thinking like a lawyer, right? That's the value. Well, you know who thinks better like a lawyer than most first-year associates? Generative AI. Generative AI thinks better than most first-year associates. So if the goal of law school is to help you think like a lawyer at a very quick pace, we are making ourselves unvaluable because generative AI is already passing us on the bar exam. It's soon going to be passing us in terms of doing the tasks of first-year associates at prestigious law firms in terms of what it can do. So this mentality of you want to think like a lawyer, that has got to change. It's not about being the most academic. It's about the person that can use the most tools at their disposal, that can use generative AI in the way that it is soon going to be unleashed. So again, just problematic mindset is if the whole purpose of law school is to make you think like a lawyer, you're becoming devalued the second that you step out of law school because there's already a fractional cost of what you can do in generative AI that is available to anybody that is hiring, and certainly that doesn't get the job done when it comes to running a small firm. Finally, another issue in law school is that law school teaches you to devalue numbers. And I don't know that law school necessarily teaches this, but I think you hear a lot of lawyers joking that they went to law school because they couldn't do math. I went to law school because I couldn't do math. I wasn't going to be an engineer, right? Basically numbers don't matter in law school. And unfortunately, in business, numbers are everything. This took me a long time to figure out because my undergraduate was in philosophy. Then I went to law school. I had fortunately a minor in math, but that didn't really connect in terms of numbers being important when it came to the business world. But I kind of had this idea that numbers don't matter, big picture ideas, vision, academic side of things, that's going to be fine. That's going to help me get through business. And in reality of business, numbers are everything. Analytics should drive every decision. So this mentality that is, I would say, kind of like born culturally in law school and then kind of extends into the legal profession is, I'm a lawyer because I can't do math. That is total crap if you are a law firm owner. One more, actually. I thought that was the last one, but I missed one in my notes. So one more problematic mentality that we have from law school is that basically the measurement of success is somebody that can perform under pressure, that can perform in a time crunch. Every law school exam, every law school final, the bar exam, all of these tests are basically time crunch tests. Basically, too much to read, too much to spit back on paper, and effectively not enough time to do that in. I remember most recent exam that I took was the National College of DUI Defense's DWI expert exam a couple of years back. Same thing there. Too much to be able to do in not enough time. And it's intentional, right? Like the intentionality is we want to find somebody that can kind of sort through the facts, hit the major points because they can't possibly discuss every aspect of what's contained within the exam question. They got to focus on the right stuff. And so, boom, it's all pressure cooked. And, finals week in law school, you just see everybody staying up crazy hours studying, for the bar exam. Everybody is like stressed out, and basically like your entire life comes down to 2 days at the North Carolina Ag Center, 6 hours a day, just basically it's all time crunch. It's all effectively trying to test who can do the most in basically a constrained time period. So what does this teach? Well, one thing it does is it encourages procrastination, right? I'm not going to study for this stuff now. Like I can wait until finals week because that's when I've got to put all the information into my brain and then spew it back up, right? I don't have to like process it over the course of the semester. So it teaches procrastination, but it also says that you're not performing well unless you are pressure cooked. Again, it de-emphasizes preparation. It de-emphasizes being able to spend significant chunks of time on things that are important and non-stress time, right? We want to be making decisions for our clients, for our businesses in as stress-free an environment as we possibly can, so that we are thinking clearly, so that we can see every issue. And so it's just not conducive to the reality of practicing law and running a business. It is a rite of passage. That's what these pressure cook situations are. Rite of passage, and basically, can you perform under pressure? So again, being able to perform under pressure is great, but it's not like the end all be all of either practicing or owning a business. So law school. Law school builds in some bad mental loops when it comes to business and running a small firm. So how do we solve this? What is this solution? Well, I've said many times on the podcast that you have to become a self-made MBA, Master of Business. You have to become a self-made MBA. Maybe you're fortunate enough or smart enough to have gone through a law school that had like a joint MBA program and JD program. And so, or you studied business in undergraduate. I think most lawyers, and myself included, most of the lawyers I've talked to on the podcast didn't have any background in studying business. So you have to become a self-made MBA. I did a podcast episode on 10 resources for doing this, for becoming a self-made MBA back on episode 57. I shared those resources, but you have to educate yourself in the world of business and retrain your brain to think in a business way. Reading, to me, is the number one way to rewire your brain. I have shared many times on the podcast my experience reading for the first time Michael Gerber's E-Myth Revisited. And that book was one of those just like mind-blowing rewiring of the brain moments in my life and certainly in my professional life. Reading that book just changed the way that I thought about my firm. And we have to be constantly soaking in masters of business, experts in business, in order to rewire our brain to become business oriented. Because there's some disordered wiring that has gone on likely in undergraduate, but certainly in law school when it comes to running a small firm and the complexities and difficulties of doing that. You have to absorb like a sponge information about how to run your practice better. So obstacle number one is law school. The solution is to become a self-made MBA. Obstacle number two, there's no meaningful feedback loop. If you're a solo practitioner and you've hung your shingle, there is very limited opportunity, interest, thought, or courage, whatever it might be, to reach out to other lawyers about how to run a practice. I think we're so caught up with trying to make sure that we're doing everything right on a case, and we're bouncing a case off of other attorneys, other colleagues, people that we're seeing in the courtroom. We're focused so much on getting the case part of it right that we don't really focus any of those conversations, generally speaking, towards business. So a lot of times the meaningful feedback loop, if you're not talking to any other lawyers about this, is you're bouncing it off yourself. And if you're not a good business person, and most of us are not, that's a pretty crappy feedback loop. You're not getting a lot of good inputs into that loop. So maybe you've decided, hey, I'm gonna bounce this off of some other lawyers. And I can remember very early on, it would drive me a little bit crazy, and I'm still like kind of a little bit like mind boggled by this. It doesn't kind of make me as mad now. I just don't really understand it. But I can remember sitting in bar rooms in several of the counties that I practiced in. So, an attorney lounge, bar room is probably not like the best way to describe it. An attorney lounge in the courthouse, bunch of attorneys, mostly criminal defense lawyers, waiting for their case to be called, or, just sitting around shooting the breeze. And effectively, most of the conversation was complaining about clients, staff, DAs, and judges. Every once in a while, you would get some interesting conversation about a specific legal issue or topic. Some people would just be talking about sports, weather, whatever it might be. And that's, I guess better than nothing if at least you're getting some meaningful feedback about cases. But almost never did the conversation shift into a business conversation. How are you getting clients? What are you doing in terms of your firm to hire a paralegal? What is your process for taking in a new call? What is your policy regarding client communication or client callbacks? How do you manage all of the client calls? Almost never did it transition into a business conversation. And that is a huge miss. Even if you're one-on-one with a colleague or another, somebody who's a good friend, or a lawyer that you really respect as an attorney, almost always the conversation is about a specific case. So if you just go to a random attorney for business advice, to me, it's like going to your accountant for business advice, except that the accountant at least probably had some business classes. So it's actually even worse than doing that. It'd be like going to your doctor for business advice. Unless this is somebody that is really good at running a law practice, seems to have a healthy amount of clients, seems to always be, extremely prepared in the courtroom, clearly is making it work when they're back at the office, that person is probably not the right person to be going and asking business advice of. They are a technician doing technician's work, typically when you interact with them at the courthouse. It's very hard to gauge how things are going back at their office. How are they scheduling their day? How many clients are they having coming in? How many calls and appointments do they have? What are their fees? All of that stuff is hidden. It's hard to gauge that in the courtroom. So, what is the solution to this no meaningful feedback loop? We've got to find a group of criminal defense-oriented business firm owners. Criminal defense business-oriented firm owners. You got to find a group of criminal defense business-oriented firm owners. That's where you get meaningful feedback, is by talking about the business of law with lawyers that are good at the business of running a law firm. That's how you get meaningful feedback. Now, when I was coming along, I don't know that anything like that existed. It certainly didn't exist in those bar rooms. We had local bar meetings. There was not very much conversation about business there. There was no CLEs getting taught in Western North Carolina about how to run your small firm, your small criminal defense firm well. There did start to become, opportunities that I would hear about business conferences for estate planning lawyers, personal injury lawyers. There was some national business conferences that were going on. Atticus had called me several times, letting me know about different business conferences that they were running for all practice areas, all people all over the country, to come in and get some business information. But it wasn't a group. It was just a one-time event. This group did not exist. It does now. There is a group of business-oriented lawyers that are criminal defense practitioners that get together on a monthly basis via Zoom to discuss business. And the name of that group is the Freedom Fighters Book Club. I've started calling it the Freedom Fighters Mastermind Group. But the third Friday of each month from 12:30 p.m. to 1:30 p.m., we have a group of criminal defense, business-oriented law firm owners that get together to discuss business topics and how to run a small practice better. It is free. The charge of admission is to come and share your ideas. Completely free. Get on board the call. Learn about how to run a firm better. Share about how to run a firm better. And elevate your game and everybody else is on the call. At our February 21st meeting, we are discussing Liz Wiseman's book, Impact Players. At our March 21st meeting, we're going back into kind of what has become the textbook of our recent conversations, Vern Harnish's Scaling Up. The events are on freedomfighters.law. Under the events page, you can sign up, you can RSVP. I'll make sure that I get you the link. It's on the webpage, but if you have questions about it, call. Because we want law firm owners that are invested in taking their practice to the next level on the call to get as many ideas about how to run a practice in the best possible way, in the most profitable way on our monthly meetings. So, obstacle number 2, there's no meaningful feedback loop. The solution is to find a group of criminal defense, business-oriented firm owners. And as far as I know, there's only one in North Carolina. Number three obstacle is a constantly changing market. I would say evolving, but I think sometimes the market actually devolves in terms of the customer experience, in terms of effective marketing. I think that the market can actually kind of get better or worse. So I'm just going to say a changing market, a dynamic market. Once you have a business that is running well, the problem is that it doesn't automatically continue to run well. You have to stay engaged. You have to stay on top of the business. So, some of the changing market complexities, changing market issues. One of them revolves around advertising, marketing, branding, whatever you want to call it. Those disruptions that occur within the basically getting new potential clients to call you within the leads category. How do you get clients in your door? So there is marketing disruptions. That might be the latest Google update. Currently, obviously, generative AI is very much changing the game in terms of how marketing is done and how generative AI can be utilized in basically, blasting your voice, your brand in a much more meaningful way at a fraction of the cost. So that's one major disruption. Another changing market issue might be a caseload shift or less of a particular type of cases. I have seen over the past several years the DWI market drying up. Some years it seems like it's drying up faster than others, but it's drying up. And everything points to the fact that with technology that is coming in vehicles, it is drying up permanently. And I'm sure that there's people out there that are thinking that's crazy talk. So again, we'll see in 20 years what the DWI market looks like compared to what it is today. But there's definitely been a decline in the DWI numbers over the past 10 years. Again, this is why numbers are important, because they don't lie. They don't care. So you might see the actual case type drying up. I can remember when I first started practicing, foreclosures were through the roof after the market crash of 2007, like everything, 2008, everything was just totally foreclosure heavy. Real estate was down in terms of real estate transactions. Foreclosure law was way up. And then within a couple of years, that course correction happened, and attorneys that had been foreclosure lawyers no longer had work. Real estate lawyers that had barely squeaked by were blazing again. The market changes. There's shifts. Big change coming in the market that I've talked about several times on the podcast is private equity getting involved in the legal space. And again, regardless of whether or not a non-lawyer can own a law firm, which is currently not allowed in North Carolina, it is already changing the way that law firms have to operate, because you're not competing just against other law firms. You're competing against every other business, and the expectation that other businesses are setting for customers, for your clients. Private equity's involvement in those other business arenas is already changing the game for law firm owners and the expectations of law firm owners. And then kind of just jumping into like a related track, client expectations. So if you're a client in 1995, you get a DWI in 1995, you're researching a lawyer. How many Google reviews do you expect that lawyer to have in 1995? Answer, 0. You expect them to have 0 Google reviews. This is 30 years ago, right? So we're looking back 30 years, but a lot can change in that time. So in 1995, you expect 0 Google reviews. In fact, you probably don't find them on the internet. You probably don't find a website. You're probably finding them in the yellow pages, calling based on a billboard that you see on the side of the road, based on some sort of radio ad, because you see their sign on the street corner. Phone book, right? Literally, that's how we're looking for somebody. Yellow pages. So you expect 0 Google reviews. You expect your lawyer not to have a cell phone in 1995. So if you are going to get the lawyer on the phone, you got to call them during normal business hours. And then if it's like, well, that attorney's not here, it's like, all right, I guess I'll just wait for them to call me back. And if it's close to 5, it's like, I'm definitely not going to hear from that attorney until tomorrow or later. And probably not going to worry about sending them an email because they might not have an email. If the lawyer's trying to communicate with me, maybe he's sending me something in snail mail, paper mail, in my mailbox. And so I'm getting it 5 days after he's drafted the letter. These are the expectations of a client 30 years ago. Today, what is the expectations? Well, depending on what market you're in, maybe you're not competitive if you don't have 100 Google reviews. You just are not going to get a call because those are trust stamps. That's what a Google review is. It's a trust stamp from other people saying your business is great. The expectation currently is immediate response. Everybody knows every other person has a cell phone. Text messaging is the new form of communication. It's not snail mail. It's not email. It is text message. Your device to my device. I don't need to be in my house for you to talk to me. I don't need to be sitting still. I can be driving. The expectation is you're going to communicate with me immediately from the client's perspective. So what was a reasonable delay of 2 days 30 years ago is causing heartburn for your client in today's environment. So these changing market dynamics are constantly keeping us on our toes, changing the game. So that is an obstacle for us as small business owners. Just when we feel like we figured it out, the game flips, the script flips, and what worked yesterday no longer works now. So what's the solution? This is a commitment solution. You have to block off the time, as Michael Gerber would say, to work on your business instead of in it. You have to have time each and every week to work on your business instead of in it. And this is so difficult. If you are a practitioner, a technician, it is so difficult in the criminal defense space to take that practitioner hat off and put the business hat on and go free from distractions that are required when you're wearing technician hat. Part of that space, part of that time that is committed to working on your business instead of in it has to be devoted to forecasting the changes that are coming in the legal market and get prepared. Forecasting the worst case scenario, forecasting the things that are going to go wrong has got to become part of the equation, part of your regular way of thinking. So, number 3 obstacle is a changing market. The solution to that is to work on your business instead of in it, to spend time forecasting changes that are coming to the legal market. So, for all you small business owners out there, if you're still listening, I appreciate it. I want to tell you how much I admire what you do, because running a small firm is absolutely no freaking joke. It is not for the faint of heart. It is difficult work. It is demanding work, and it is important work. And I admire you and appreciate the fact that you are making it happen in the real world, getting after it, doing it every day. Look forward to speaking with you again next time.